Welcome back, listeners, to another podcast episode of Between Two Worlds. I am your host, Annika, and this week we are going to delve into an exciting divination topic. And it's for sure one of my favorites and one that I have a personal close connection to, which is osteomancy, or the practice of divining with bones. So, osteomancy more specifically, and not just in general bone casting, since that usually refers to a set that contains other curios and trinkets within the set. I personally don't have much experience with that. Well, actually, any, since the set I use and the way I use bone casting is strictly with bones only. And so there's going to be a lot in this topic. There's history, there's origins, there's moral standards, there's ethical standards. But first things first, what is osteomancy and what is the goal of it? Well, like any other goal of divination, you are trying to seek answers or guidance from some sort of other spirit that is not ourselves. Specifically, this form of divination is extremely open-ended because of its intuitive nature. You toss a set of bones onto a cloth, casting board, or something like that of your choosing, and you interpret the message through intuition, traditional methods, individual technique, and or all of the above. This is exactly why it's not really a common practice of divination like tarot is, because it's just not as cut and dry. It's really up for interpretation. And that is a bad thing or a good thing. When you are first learning, it can be, well, extremely overwhelming to think about how you need to just all of a sudden know what it means by staring at bones that are literally tossed on a cloth. And it could be just as weird looking for the person receiving the reading. Well, at first, once we talk about the details of this method and you understand the steps to it, that someone will have their mind fucking blown by the time you're done listening to exactly what the little graveyard has to say. What I like most about this form of divining is that it really forces the practitioner to create a relationship with each piece, establish a meaning to it and its corresponding animal spirit, and also to be open to the fact that it is a relationship. So that means the pieces that you work with are subject to evolution. This practice revolves around animistic belief. While yes, you can practice however you want, if you do not subscribe to animism, its origins are deeply connected to it, and reading the pieces in tandem to the animal the bones came from. It's not a quote, easy way of divining, and it takes time. Once you start to learn it, you never really stop. It's constantly changing, and the way you tell the story changes too. Your readings are not less accurate, but understand that the pieces themselves are spirits, and one day it may tell you one thing, and soon, a few weeks later, it may change completely. So let's get more of the sensitive stuff out of the way. While osteomancy itself is not a closed practice, there are closed practices where bone throwing and bone casting exists. So while diving into this method, obviously be mindful, be respectful, and aware of how you approach this method of divination. If you do choose to do more research on specific methods and traditions, be aware of these closed practices and any appropriation that may be exploited in the great big world of the internet. That is really about how much I'm going to say on that topic because that's really how much I'm valid to speak on it. So let's get into sourcing bones. That's probably the first step to this all. Obviously, this is not a method of divination for everyone. So if you are against using animal-related material, kindly stop listening, or maybe stay to hear it all out. As witches, and as someone who is either trying to start this divination practice or someone who already knows, we should understand sourcing your bones is extremely important, if not the most important step, for a multitude of reasons. We don't want to go out there killing animals solely for the purpose of us using just a few bones. And we certainly do not want to support people who do that and make profit. So there are many practical ways you can source bones. It just takes a little extra time. And that first step is with research. Research who you're buying from if you choose to outsource your bones. There are many shops you can find, ask for proof of their procedures from sourcing and go from there. Take it slow. Don't feel like you need to rush when it comes to gathering all bones at once. Many of these shops already have access to, say, large pieces of land, and they wild forage for deceased animals, and they take the time and the effort to clean them and package them specifically for magical purposes. This is also an option for you. If you want to take the extra step of beginning this relationship with that animal spirit from the start, then you can do this step on your own. If you happen upon an animal who was killed naturally, then by all means, clean the bones yourself and craft your kit from there. As a disclaimer, please be aware of your local animal species and what is protected and what's not okay to take home. I personally have a mix of both of these sources for my own kit. Some can argue, well, can't you just use bones from the meals that you eat if you are a meat eater? Um, yeah, that's really the short answer. Say you buy rotisserie chicken, cow bones, ribs, the like, but understand that is something that is completely dependent on your moral standards alone and how you approach the animistic side of this practice. Was the chicken or the cow happy? Was it free range? Was it healthy to have access to the sun? Or was it kept in a concrete pen? These are all things that we want to take into consideration when we go that extra step on having a working relationship with these animal spirits. Was its waking life fulfilled? That may be something that can translate not so greatly in the afterlife when you are choosing to use the bones that you consume the meat from. On the contrary, it could be something even more meaningful. Say you have access to a family farm and you know exactly the kind of life that these animals lived, or I don't know, it's kind of wrong to eat your friends, but to each his own. But say you had your favorite cow and whatever, it could be something that you can also take into consideration on the other side of the spectrum. So, depending on where you source your meat, how confident you are in that statement on that packaging, or really if that's something you're even going to take into consideration. Now, if you want witchcraft on a budget, then I say fuck yes. Do what you gotta do. Consecrate the bones, clean them properly. No saliva, chicken grease, or anything else that will make them mold or rot, and use them to your little heart's desire and make it work. That is exactly what witchcraft in the modern era is about. It's about making it work for us. Casting bones relies heavily on your relationship to the pieces, and that affects how you read them as they fall. The heart of this is animism. Each piece has a soul and is a part of something that was once bigger, breathing, sleeping, hunting, birthing, living, and dying all at once. Bones themselves are a reminder of death and that the physical is not permanent. We will rot, die, and exist in a whole new way. We transform, as every living thing does. Take the time to care about the relationship you are about to start, and understand this is a commitment. You can make regular offerings to the animal spirit you work with. If you are someone who works within a sort of mind palace or inner temple, connect with them there in the other world. I just did an episode on the astral realm, and this is something you can absolutely utilize. Meditate with the animal, invite them to your space, and leave them offerings, even within your inner temple. If you don't want to, go out and do it physically, it's just as effective. It can go as far as creating a space for them, a home, a place to rest, or play, or interact with, somewhere where they can be as they were before they were just a few pieces of little claws or vertebrae left in your bag. It's important that the pieces you use are connected to an animal spirit that is also, in turn, willing to work with you just as much. Some spirits may be hesitant and not even willing. That goes to say with all sorts of spirits when, working in the realm of any tradition in witchcraft. It could be necromancy, it could be working with plants. It could be working with the energies of planets. This is something that you have to respect. Their personalities will begin to shine. Trust me. My bobcat bones always tell me something different than the coyote claws do, or the alligator scoots, and so on. And within each of those spirits, they are open to changing. The coyote claws don't always mean one thing, right? Claws can be used to dig for food, dig a den for shelter, be used for protecting oneself, or just like a coyote spirit as a whole doesn't always mean trickery or deception. He can mean adaptability, resilience, transformation, or even playfulness. It all depends on the context. And we need to absorb all the angles and understand that we can't just get the reason why a sign was given to us just because we're asking for it. Maybe we asked for the sign in the first place, but now it's our job to dissect it into parts. When it happened, how it happened. It's similar in bone casting. How do the bones cross or touch each other? Is there an outlier? And how does the bobcat interact with the raccoon? This is why divining with bones is said to take a lifetime to master. There is no studying the cards and remembering the fool's journey. It is the practice of challenging your magic to interact and nourish a relationship with spirits held within these little tag locks. So, other than, your own relationship to the animal, consider also the part used. I think it's easy for a lot of people to get really confused on how do you even read bones in the first place. A bone casting set does not come with a little rule book. There's nothing to essentially go back, flip through some pages, and reread the meaning of each bone. The short answer to that is, well, there is. And that is, what the fuck did the bone do in the body to begin with? We can really boil it down to just that. It's already assigned a job. Feet bones, for example, may indicate travel, steadiness, or even indicate someone has lost their footing in a situation, depending on how they land after they're thrown. Teeth can be interpreted with defense or offense, or communication. Now, who do the feet bones belong to? Is it the bobcat spirit? Then I would say maybe it's a situation that requires swiftness or to be sure-footed. Bobcats take each step with intention. They do not haphazardly walk. It is calculated, intentional, silent, and potentially deadly. These bones, these parts of animals are potent. They really, really are as clear as day once you find the tune. It's like scrubbing through the radio frequencies on a road with dodgy reception, then suddenly, aha, a clear channel. And it's your favorite song. Even if the method itself almost solely relies on the interpretation and intuition of the reader, some might even say instinct, because that is exactly what it starts to feel like when, you're building this relationship and you're getting a grasp on it. But who's to say that's not what most divination is? Yes, tarot has a correspondence with each card, but what makes a really good tarot reader? Someone who has their own unique way of reading you those cards. They have their own relationship to that specific card, whether it's the Hierophant or the Ten of Cups or the Hermit. These are things that they have taken the time seeing that card over and over again and recognizing these patterns on how it's showing up to that specific reader, and they know how to interpret it, especially when it comes to things so personal like a tarot deck. There's different art styles or even custom decks, and we can really fine tune it to our own conduit. Scrying is no different. It's a vessel for us to turn a key and open that little door for guidance and insight. So let's say you have your bones. You know, you're building your set and you want to start. Once you have your bones, you want to be able to clean them, and not physically, because hopefully that part is already done, but spiritually. You want to consecrate them, smoke cleanse them, anoint them, however you please. Just be aware that these are bones. So they are made up of minerals, proteins, collagen. They are vulnerable to the elements if not taken care of properly. Always keep them clean and dry, dust them. Do not leave them exposed to direct sunlight for long periods of time. You do not want the bones turning to dust and ash because you did not do your due diligence. Plus, it's a part of respecting them. You're taking care of them. You can expose the bones to herbal incense and smoke. You can leave them in salt. You can even bury them in a safe place or put them under the moon. Um, really, you can do what feels good for you. I just wouldn't recommend any water since that will definitely damage them. Some people like to even perform rituals on their set before they put it to use, and this part is up to you. I definitely stand behind it. Keep in mind that you can also carry them with you. So, spending this physical time with them, being mindful of their fragility, of course, but I certainly like to do that when I acquire a new piece. I'll keep it with me no matter my day and cleanse it afterwards, since I don't want any bad, icky stuff that happened in my mundane human life to stick to them. But it shows the spirit that you are committed, you know, getting to know each piece. Again, it takes time and you can assign whatever meaning, gender, or even astronomical relationship you want to it once you start to get a feel of who you're working with. Personally, I tend to have my pieces sway to a solar or lunar polarity instead of genders, even though one is associated with more masculine energy and one is more feminine energy. But that's also not set in stone, right? So I understand it may show up differently from time to time, depending on the reading and what exactly is coming through at the time. You can assign names to each piece if you'd like, or you can assign a name to the animal spirit who holds the bone in the first place. Or maybe you find they come to you and they expose their own name to you. You can also decorate these pieces if you really feel called to. Sometimes it can be confusing, or at least in the beginning, to remember what bone belongs to what animal. So you can always assign a color to them by making a mark, painting a piece, or the whole thing. This is the part that really makes it so unique is this is your set. You make it look how you want. All right, so when it comes to the casting, the actual throwing of the bones and interpreting them, there are lots of methods. Surprise! Another reason why this is a very open-ended method of divination. So you can start with a few bones, you can start with a pair, or all of them at once. There are dedicated cloths and casting trays. You can get that kind of have a map where it can guide you on how to read the casting once it's thrown. I personally have never used one, but what I can share is in the beginning, and even today, sometimes I roughly use a tarot spread. And they're just so great at creating this sort of guideline, especially in the beginning. If you have a certain question and you think, well, a Celtic cross will give me the perfect insight for this burning question, then fucking do it. The thing is, you aren't going to throw the bones in the pattern of a tarot spread, right? That would defeat the whole purpose. But you read them in the pattern of the tarot spread. So it's almost like you cast the bones, and for me at least, I visualize the spread in front of me, almost like an invisible template over the bones. So interpreting the bones is one feat. But now you have to start learning to interpret them in groups. So this takes practice, practice, practice. This can help ease things until you can stand on your own. And you can even always go back to it. There's no shame in that. This little bone throwing world is your oyster. Like I said, I still use it as a rough guide sometimes. Another way is kind of splitting the casting and your mind into two halves. So one above and one below to represent the upper world or the lower world, inner world, the outer world. I think, the biggest thing I can stress when it comes to bone casting is there are no standards. And some people hate this, but I personally love it. You just need to learn to work with it. Sometimes so much freedom with something can be so overwhelming, scary at times, and make you feel even more lost than you may have felt before when you had rules. But if you look at the cup half full, it's liberating. There is room for creativity and intuition. You are strengthening that muscle. At some point in time, I think it might be every little witch's desire to be that witch that stares into her cauldron bubbles, her mirror, her crystal ball, and just straight up tell the fucking future. Well, we can get pretty fucking close. You just need to manage your expectations. This still isn't a Disney movie, but give yourself some slack and accept the journey ahead of you and allow yourself to learn. That is exactly how a diviner becomes a fucking great diviner. So after you cast and you have your reading, it's good practice to kind of close the session properly, right? Bones hold memories, energy, and feelings. So cleanse your set. Offer thanks for physical offerings, saying a lot of offerings here, but you get my point. And journal your insights. This is important. You want to be able to see where you started, how far you've come when reading the bones, and also just generally recording your readings. I mean, who doesn't do that? I'm sure there's lots of people who don't, but you know what I mean. These messages that you seek can seem like one thing in the moment and later have a whole new side or different meaning that you didn't even see in the beginning. So take the time for a good after session etiquette. Bone throwing is straight up a fucking magical feeling. I don't think it's recognized enough as a valid method. Maybe it is. I haven't seen it really anywhere on social media, maybe here and there, and I definitely appreciate the other content creators who have brought light to it. But maybe it's just because tarot is just so much more popular. But I've always been deeply connected to animal spirits, especially after death. And I know that may seem a little morbid, but I really was the kid who always collected bones. I buried every dead animal I encountered. I always spotted roadkill while driving or walking, and that may be why my connection to bone throwing is so strong, but there is a strangely comforting feeling about understanding the death process and how the afterlife is just that. It is afterlife, and these spirits are still loud and clear. And most of the time, in my experience, they really, really enjoy the relationship they gain with you just as much as you will with them. Who the hell would turn down a new spirit ally anyway? If it's not your thing, then fine. But then why the fuck are you still listening to this? The point is, anyone can learn this, and it's really, really fun. It's definitely eye-opening. It's most of the time a new way of divination, and you step out of the margins of, this little pamphlet that's shoved into the tarot box. You create your own. And I'm definitely not trying to hate on tarot. Trust me. I love tarot. I have had experience with plenty of decks that I have connected greatly to. Nowadays, I truly just have one really good deck that I use that I've learned the ins and outs of. But I think it's really easy for people to pick up tarot, and there's nothing wrong with easy. But I just have a certain amount of an appreciation when it comes to witches seeking the not easy route. That really shows dedication and that shows that, you're serious about this. It's not just some sort of trend to be a witch and pick up a tarot deck and read to all your friends. Sure, it's fun, but it's more fun when you really start to dive into the other world and creating this relationship with all these other spirits. And it's impressive. You really learn to be impressed with yourself once you really get down the foundations of bone throwing. And it looks fucking cool too, so that's awesome. Uh, but anyway, I digress. I really, really hope that this episode can help someone out there, even a little bit when it comes to this fancy little subject of throwing bones. And I definitely want to thank you for coming back if you are a returning listener or even a new one. And before I go, I did want to just put a little bit of I guess, like a personal story out there. But the title of this episode, as you can see, is What Do the Chicken Bones Say? And it's kind of a funny story. My boyfriend and I were watching Outlander because duh. And there was a scene where bone throwing happened. And first of all, I was extremely surprised. I was like, what the fuck? That's so cool. And I was so excited. We were eating dinner at the time. We like to sit on the couch, eat dinner, and watch our show. And I kid you not, the scene just ended with the bag of bones being tossed, and they were reading them and interpreting them. And my boyfriend got up to put his plate away, and somehow it slipped. Well, all the chicken bones landed on the floor, and he instinctively screamed with his arms out, "What do the chicken bones say?" And seriously, we laughed our asses off for like 40 fucking minutes. I can still crack up to like the point of tears today because it's just another one of those things where magical timing, it's like it can't get any better, you know? So that was the title inspiration for this episode. And I thought it was going to be fun to kind of reel our way into Samhain. It's October now. Bones, death, transformation, it's all under the same cloak. So hopefully you get inspired to try this divination method or even begin your own relationship with an animal spirit and work from there. Anyway, have a wonderful morning, day, night, whatever it is where you are. And I thank you again for coming in and listening.